So I think we're going to have to move on to the next speaker. Thanks, Stella. So our second guest speaker is Benaifer Bhandari, who's another phenomenal woman. She's currently the CEO of Hopscotch Women's Centre, which is an organisation that empowers women and supports victims of domestic abuse. So despite adversity and unsupportive management in the early days, Benaifer powered through and increased the turnover of Hopscotch by tenfold, and her persistence continues to grow and drive the business forward today. Her dedication and perseverance is well recognised in her industry, and Benaifer sits on the board for a number of charities across London, including one we've probably all heard of, the Leche League. So let's hear from her. Welcome, Benaifer. You're up now.
Thank you, Saima. Thank you, Stella, for sharing so deeply from the heart, and thank you, team, for putting today together. This is really, really special. It's a special place you've created. So I was born and brought up here. My parents had migrated as British citizens from East Africa just a year before, and I was what I call a bonus baby. So they had a family, they had their son and daughter, and then 13 years after my sister and 18 after my brother, I came along. And that meant that very unusually, I was brought up with a lot of love and attention, a lot. I had basically three adults, four parents, fussing over me in those formative years. And that has given me resilience that I've carried through into my life. Unfortunately, one of the external caregivers I had was abusive, and just that year or two in those formative years of having that experience of physical abuse knocked me, so by the time I started school, school wasn't the right place for me. I wasn't confident enough. And I had this dichotomy of extreme confidence from the loving support at home to fear of strangers, fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, fear of everything, basically. So anybody looking at me would have thought a lot like Stella said, there's a confident kid. But when it came to it, I didn't seem to achieve very much. I couldn't concentrate in class and didn't perform like my peers did. And that steadily got worse. So by the time I was in secondary school, there was a lot of confusion about who Benaifer was. And first of all, just being a kid of colour in, white Wembley in the 70s was a weird thing anyway. And then on top of that, why I couldn't seem to concentrate and perform. What was that thing that they always said, in your report, has potential, but, doesn't seem to meet it. That was me all the way through. Now, as an adult, I know I have very, very strong ADD traits, and that was part of it. School just wasn't quick enough for me. It was boring. It was very, very boring. But that level of support that I needed just wasn't there. So I left school at quite an early age with this confusion. Inside, I felt I was intelligent, but I had no proof of it. I had no qualifications. I left with one O-level. And I went straight into the workplace. And again, people were like, hey, you're one to watch. And I was thinking, but on what basis? There's no evidence here. And it really took a failed marriage, a lucky escape, and then meeting my partner to spend quality time with somebody and constantly hassle this guy by saying, but what do you mean that was an intelligent thought or move or statement, or, you know, explain what you see in me, because I don't get it. It took until being in my 30s, really, and we had children, we decided to home educate, and that was the turning point, because in that home community education, I met some fierce women. Some of whom were single parents who decided to autonomously educate their children, you know, despite huge barriers. And I started to see myself through their eyes, and that was the turning point. And I realized, in a sense, I should fake it, because it is real. I just don't believe it. So if I pretend, then there's some congruence. And that's a lot of what I did in those years of raising my kids. They were 16 before they went into an institution, was looking at them, because I was trying to raise them in the way I hoped I had been raised, and the support I had had. And I tried to give them the people around them that I wish I had had around me, holding me. I became a volunteer with Leche League, which is an international breastfeeding support organization. It's the world's leading women's health charity. Now, Leche League is volunteer-based. There's very, very few paid people in the whole organization across the world. And that worked just fine for me, because I could do my work. I could you know, facilitate whatever the boys needed at the time. I could do a degree, which I did at that stage, and eventually join the leadership team in La Leche League, and start to take on all these task after task after task. And that's when I found myself. I didn't identify that ADD in me, but I identified that I have capacity, and when my capacity is full, I'm happy, I'm vibrant, and it releases more capacity. So understanding me and who I am, it took a bit of time. Once I got it, that was it. That was the turning point. And so from the Leche League, I eventually joined the Council of Directors and started doing international work. That was constantly proving to myself that I was intelligent. I did have these gifts, and it was right that I was sharing them. Once the boys moved into college and uni and stuff, then I realized I had to do something more with this, and I started to look for a charity to run, and I came across Hopscotch Asian Women's Centre at the time. I got that job. I was shocked, and that was four and a bit years ago. I inherited a failing charity. It was struggling. It's not unusual. Those of you here who are in the charity sector know that the last 6-7 years have been hell, and so it was understandable the situation they were in, but not good enough for me. So I started to look at the governance of the organization, and those who know me know I'm obsessed with good governance, getting that straightened out and robust, and making sure everybody in the organization and around the organization understood the governance of Hopscotch, led to some strategic changes. We dropped the Asian so we could be there for every minoritized, ethnically minoritized woman and girl. I thought I was doing a really good job. And then the real learning happened. So all those negative thoughts and feelings became compressed in my relationship with the board. I think they were exhausted, basically. And that's what happens when you don't have good governance around your trustees and their terms, etc., and support for them. And I found myself in a position where I was either going to give up, because why should I do that to myself? Or I had to find resilience from somewhere. And much as Stella said, I had to speak. I found it really, really hard to speak about this. So I spoke to my partner, who has the leadership experience, and I leaned hard into my girlfriends, most of whom, I'm so lucky, are therapists. Because they knew me through this home education journey. They saw me grow. They saw me in my truth and in my lie, and they could call me out on it. I wish I had leaned into them earlier, but when it happened, and they gave me that strength. They didn't let me give in. They knew that if I stepped back at this point, I would never step back into this world at the level that I needed to be at for my ADD. And that was the most empowering moment, when I realized, as Stella, you said, there's that moment. For me, that was that moment. I've put robust governance in place, which includes disciplinary action. So if I'm not performing, take that disciplinary action against me. That's the right thing to do. And if I am performing, actually let me get on with it. Once I'd figured that out for myself, that was it. I was on the road. And since then, we have a brand new board. And going through lockdown was so interesting, because there's that cliche, when you're a CEO, you're alone at the top, you can't share. It's right, you can't share. There is very little space. So I had my girlfriends, I had my partner, but what lockdown gave me was peer support. So a lot of initiatives were put into place. A lot of money was put into the support of CEOs at that time. And it took me a while to find what worked and what didn't work. For example, one of those support sessions was with somebody who was facilitating, who was an older white man, and that didn't work for me. But then there were other groups that really worked. And then I formed my own support group of other CEOs in the area. What the Leche League gave me was, when women work together in a dynamic way, there's emotional intelligence. What Hopscotch demonstrated was many medium-sized charities still operate in a very male way. So bringing that emotionally intelligent way of working, that organic way, that heart-centered way, in lockdown was really, really interesting. And I found my tribe then of CEOs who worked like me, who could deal with my level of emotional need and the need to give emotionally too. And they've stood beside me through thick and thin. So now I've got the real operational support in my partner. I've got my girlfriends there who really know me and hold me and push me. And then I've got this work peer support, but it took a while to get all that together. And I know that through that, somebody's going to hold me in my moments of darkness. And it's all right to be in those moments of darkness, because you can see it in my eyes. And when you see that in my eyes, you know that I know what you're going through. But practically, sometimes you need to move through it quite quickly. So one of the things I realized was, if I didn't have time to jump on WhatsApp to get that level of support I needed, I made sure that I did something positive. And that's not a hard thing to do. I think especially for women, we can churn out those positive things, do one little positive thing, boost, get the adrenaline down, get the endorphins going, and then helped to turn around my mindset within minutes so that I could deal with whatever I was facing. Having a chair of trustees who shares my vision of that emotionally intelligent way of leadership was a game changer. And, you know, that relationship now is priceless. And, you know, we want to take it on the road because we don't see it very often, you know, and we want to share what that looks like. What does that feel like? You know, in moments when she is so amazing, I can say, I love you. I genuinely love you, because together what we are doing is, you know, we're pushing this organization into the stratosphere because of this connection that we have. And I could never have said those words 4 years ago. The other thing that happened, thank you, Sunny, and I'll tell you in the last minute, was operating from that heart space and in that emotionally intelligent way. I didn't realize how much that meant to the team at Hopscotch until when we reached a real financial crisis, as we do, you know, like when you do the spring clean. That's the state we were in. I knew what was ahead. They didn't know. I did have to say, our financial runway is 3 months. So this August 2020, we could shut down if all my plans don't come into fruition. Not one staff member asked me in those 3 months, should I be looking for another job? Will I be made redundant? Will I get redundancy pay? What is this going to look like? And that to me was the biggest testament that this way, this very highly feminine way, which so many men are good at, is effective. And it was at that point that I joined all the other boards that I've joined, and I've gone back to the Leche League's Council of Directors as well, just to bring that learning, really, really hard learning, you know, that's cost me my health, cost me sleepless nights, but that belief that if I keep going with the support behind me, holding me constantly, this is possible. That belief that the team had, that was really what I drive forwards in everything that I do from, you know, from 2 years ago onwards. So I think that's about it. That was it. The last point I had was, for me, all of this is about being congruent, a congruent person. And it took me a while. I hope for you all, you've found your congruence a lot sooner than I did. But once you've got it, then the sky's the limit. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Benaifer. You know, it was, wow, I mean, like, you've been through so much with your struggles with ADT, and, you know, obviously once you found yourself and you had your technique, you know, you found that, you know, operating from your heart space and with the emotional intelligence, as you said, in the feminine way, you know, you found your tribe, and you know, naturally together you worked really well. And, you know, it's really nice to hear, you know. But anyway, I don't think we've got that much time. Do we have any questions? Anyone? No? Yeah, okay. So yeah, again, thank you, Benaifer, for your time. That was really inspirational and powerful as well. And it's really great to hear how you've got to where you are. And we're going to have to move on. Thanks so much for attending our session today. Okay, so finally, it's time for our third and final speaker, Manwara Ali, who is somebody who I also really admire. Manwara is our mentor who has encouraged and supported our team in organising today's event. Through her coaching program, she's created opportunities for each of us by encouraging us to collaborate. Manwara is a strong believer that women make great leaders and offers mentoring and coaching to help women reach their full potential as leaders. So over to you, Manwara.
Thank you, Saima. It's just listening to Stella and Benaifer. It's really hard not to then rethink what you were going to say. So I'm not going to, I mean, I know we're pressed for time, but I just want to share maybe small stories, and they might be slightly triggering, so I apologize in advance. The first story, imagine you are 12 years old and you have a family member who pulls out a knife and they want to cut you up. As a 12-year-old, how do you feel at that time? Obviously scared, afraid for your life. There's nobody else around who can help you except your younger sibling. In that situation, how do you get out of that situation? And I just remind myself of what Stella talked about and how we need to, in a lot of ways, trust our inner champion. That was me at the age of 12. And what actually stopped me or kind of gave me the courage at the time was a voice inside my head that said, what's the worst that will happen to me? The worst is I will die, but that's fine, because then he will end up in prison for the rest of his life. So that was what gave me courage to speak up. And the reason why he picked up the knife was he himself was an addict of alcohol and drugs. So a lot of his behavior was exacerbated by that. We grew up in an environment where girls don't speak. You know, boys and men have priority. Girls and women don't speak or talk back. So me talking back was not good. And so I was being challenged. And I hit back, and that shocked him, because I said, go on then, cut me up, chop me up and flush me down the toilet. Go on, do it. Whereas my younger sibling was in tears, crying, holding me back, holding him back. In that situation, he didn't go and carry out what he said he was going to do, but a 12-year-old was still scared. I had to tap into my inner courage, bravery to get myself out of that situation. But after that incident, there was quite a few other incidents. By the age of 14, I decided I'm going to study law. Why did I decide to study law? At the time, I think coming from a very typical Asian family, brought up by my father mainly, my mother suffered from mental health. It was like a respectable profession. So I thought, I'm going to study law, I'm going to be a lawyer. But also I thought, then I will know my rights as well. So that was another reason why I studied law. And that's another story, and it goes on to be something else. But, you know, just a reminder, when somebody tries to make you fearful or stop you from doing something, and they want to shut you up, the only person who's going to come to your rescue is yourself. And I know that we've heard two speakers talk about empowerment, and empowerment comes in that way when you can empower yourself. And that, like Benaifer said, it took a very long time with a lot of support to understand that. I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know that there was a brave person inside me for a very, very long time. It wasn't until I moved from job to job, I went from profession to profession. I met lots of people and I did a lot of youth work that made, from the feedback that I received from my mentees, made me realize who I was, looking back at my past. So my second story, which relates to leaning on others and empowerment from your tribe. So my second story was a very close friend I had when I was at university. We spent 3 whole years doing our law degree together. This was someone 2 years older than me. And throughout the 3 years, she had a lot of problems at home and I was always there for her. But I didn't ever feel that I was getting any support in return, because maybe I was always someone who came across like, I don't need help. I'm fine as I am. You know, I am positive, outgoing, and I always make everyone laugh in the group, and I'm always empowering others. So therefore, I don't need to be empowered, right? So after I finished my law degree and my postgraduate diploma in law, I was talking to this friend who, you know, many years later had been running her practice for 12 years, was quite a, you know, renowned lawyer on the TV channels. Some of you might even know her, actually. She was also a politician. And she was talking to me about working 7 days a week. Me, on the other hand, wanted home, family, children, didn't want to work 7 days a week. But at the time, I'd finished my postgraduate course and I wanted to train to become a solicitor. So I required 2 years training. So I said to her, because I was at the time practicing immigration, I used to do immigration appeals for people, and 5 years of casework in a women's refuge. And I said to her, why don't I help you with your firm? Thinking, or maybe I can get a training contract through her. Because everywhere else I went, they offered me like £8,000–9,000 a year to do a training contract. And I knew I'd have to put in 9 to 9, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So what really hurt me at the time was she came back with saying, Munwara, you must never, when you go for a training contract, don't tell them your future ambitions. And before she even said that, she gave me a story about a friend that she brought in as an intern who, after a few months, stole all the ideas and went and set up her own law firm. So I got the hint. So most of my journey, I've not really had anyone else to lean on. And I've not really had other people offering me support. So I guess the more I realized there was a lack of that in women, the more I realized actually it's not because women don't want to. There's a serious lack of self-awareness. Awareness that we ourselves are capable of being leaders. We are capable of lifting others, because there's so many people out there, but they don't want to lift others. They are struggling with their own confidence and things, forget about supporting somebody else. So I just shared 2 stories, and that was personal. Now I'm going to quickly mention my professional. So this is where my biggest growth has happened and my biggest support. And I guess it's going to come across strange, but my tribe have been my work colleagues. My tribe have been my board. I've actually been working at Waltham Forest Community Hub for about 13 years now. And they say you get comfortable. I would say they're comfortable with me and I'm comfortable with them. But it was really, really tough during COVID. I was working 14, 15 days in a row. And I knew I had to do that to save jobs, and I did save jobs. But the powerful thing that came out of that situation was the relationship, the growth of the relationship between the chair and myself. because there were times when we both had to accept that we really were not understanding each other and we were getting each other wrong. And I have to say, it's always been the men that have been my biggest mentors. My father, and then the chair. He has been such a wonderful mentor, but I could catch him at times questioning his own ability to support me. Why is it that we think we need to be better to be able to support somebody else? Why do we think there has to be a hierarchy to be a mentor or a mentee? Because my biggest learning has come from my mentees, people that I have helped grow. So I'm going to finish with that, just to say that we, myself, KG, Saima, and Sanate and Sarish, and Priti, of course. I'm sad that Priti can't be here today, but we've been on a journey. The journey started in October, and I'm a great believer of collaboration. Just because I didn't have a female to lean on or a tribe over the years doesn't mean that I can't be that for others. So we've been on this massive journey, and what's come out is this collaboration. And I hope that this collaboration will continue. And I'm a firm believer that when women come together, we can do great things. Great things happen that you wouldn't even imagine. So thank you for listening.
Fantastic, thanks, Manwara. Are there any questions? I think we're almost out of time. So shall I pass over to hand over to KG, my co-host?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I just want to thank everyone who has attended. It's been a privilege to even go through this whole experience with such wonderful people, and to our speakers. Benaifer is my mentor. And I as a CEO of a charity, I was doing something because I was passionate about it, but then there were things that I didn't really know. And her taking me and supporting me has really transformed the work that we do. So I just wanted to say to her, thank you very much for everything that you've done for me. And I just want to thank Stella as well for coming on, sharing and being open about her experience. And I've taken a lot in, which I'm going to use in my own personal life. And the importance of having that tribe and having that connection. Having Benaifer there, I didn't know Benaifer was connected to Manwara. It's really just an interesting world, and I didn't even know Benaifer was connected to Saima. So the world is, someone said, is like, people are like water, right? And you don't know who's connected to it. So it's good to treat people with respect. So I just want to thank everyone for coming, and we want to have this platform. Hopefully in the future we'll have more of events like this, to be able to bring to be able to create a space where we can be honest, open, and share from our heart. People think leadership is about, always appearing strong and getting it together. I totally don't buy into that. But I do believe that we need to have a space where we can do that. So thank you, everyone. Please do remember to complete our feedback form. It's very important for us to be able to get feedback on what we can do and how we can improve it. And also to relate that to the speakers as well, because I'm sure they will want, to know what you thought about their session. And so hopefully